Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tried to do this video the other day and had some technical problems, so I'll do it again today. There is a shocking news out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, with what they're calling as a DWI enterprise. Um, Now, my history includes several DWIs, so I can tell you I never came across a law enforcement officer that would perform their duties, so to speak, quote unquote duties, so to speak, is how it was being done in Albuquerque, and has recently been uncovered, and it is quite shocking. I've got a few videos I'm going to share with you. I'll make some comments on it, but to see this type of thing exposed, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised these days that there's corruption in all kinds of government and facility institutions all over the place. But it just goes one more time to show that all these measures to put people in a place to say you're a criminal and that put stigma on people when they're trying to rebuild their lives. It a lot of times is misplaced when we try to say other people are noble based on the jobs they do, and other people are not noble because of their history. And I think this is another one that illustrates that anybody can be pretty shady. So with that, I'll get into it. So everybody has side jobs, it seems like these days. But I tell you what, this one is the ultimate side job, and it had a lot of willing participants in terms of customers and what they had at stake if they didn't participate as a quote unquote customer. The DWI enterprise in the Albuquerque Police Department seemed to have a lot of tentacles, and it was driven by a DA who has really kind of headed up the scheme, and and we'll get into some of the details of what it was. Multiple law enforcement officers from the Albuquerque Police Department. Now, one thing I wasn't able to find is the original video that I had that had the chief of police in Albuquerque basically saying, "I didn't know anything about it. I go by these guys every day." I called nonsense on that video. You could tell that he knew something. There's no chance in that level of position. He either wasn't showing up for work if he didn't know, or he absolutely did know and just turned a blind eye, or was suspicious and turned a blind eye. Because if he wasn't suspicious, he's a terrible law enforcement officer to have this level of corruption going on in his agency and not notice it. I've since noticed, I think they've edited him out of this one clip I'm going to have because it looks very similar to the first one I had. And it looks to me like he may have been removed. So he might be a subject of investigation in this. And I would be surprised if he wasn't. But it was multiple Albuquerque police. There was a sheriff within this whole thing for the county. There was a private investigator that seemed to be kind of the recruit of the DWI candidates that would be seeking some kind of a deal. And then there appears to be a state trooper as well in New Mexico that also got caught up in this, and it spanned over decades. It wasn't just a one-time thing; it spanned over decades. So with that, I'll get into some of the video and show you what it is that we're seeing. I want to applaud this U.S. attorney. He at least called out the addiction they may be struggling with. You don't generally hear that from a prosecuting attorney in any way, shape, or form to recognize the addiction piece of it. Just a little sidebar. I found that a good thing. So the DA had stepped down already by the time this had aired. He was, labeled as the person that was kind of the the brains behind it or the head of the operation. But there were a number of angles in this whole thing that made it quite. There was a lot of tentacles, so it makes you wonder if he's just not taking a fall for somebody else above him. So it's 15 there. There's the blind eye comment, and I think that was important. I didn't notice that the first time, but I can tell you for sure that the chief of police was in that. That is the one. He was originally when this story was first posted online. The chief of police was in that, and in that, I wish the original video, the audio would work because I said that guy looks shady. I'm not even kidding with you. Maybe I'll try to cut that up at some point and put it out on social media because I called it that guy. There's no chance he didn't know, and I said it multiple times. There's no chance he didn't know, and here they've revised the video or edited the video on their site with this initial report. This is the exact same report. I know it for sure because he's saying the same things. And he even called out that they intentionally turned a blind eye, and he absolutely did. I look, he doesn't need a jury for me to be convinced on that one. So that was that. That was when the initial story initially broke. Well, since then, it just goes to show the level of corruption that's here. So they have had the DA and his paralegal both got raided, and I don't know how if it was really as dramatic as he's stating, but he ended up by calling the police again later because he had a break-in in his house after the FBI raid, and I'll share that with you now. Some comments on this. Now, this is the DA that was supposedly the mastermind behind all this stuff. I love how he says it's a big deal going on right now. Those are Albuquerque police that is responding to the scene. I think they know it's a big deal. They break. Now, do me a favor when you see this video. Um, Notice body language, body structure, and how this thing is being handled. Um, and tell me who you think it is. You think? So it tells me, I'm not sure what the timing of this is. I'm not, it looks to me like before things really went down. So he'd already been pled guilty. It looks like, if I guess I don't understand the timeline of this, but this video, I really should have probably investigated further on the timing of all this. But to me, it's very obvious those are cops. It doesn't, there's nothing real slick about what they're doing except just sneaking up through and grabbing hold of stuff. And they're being pretty disrespectful, or pretty respectful of the property. So they're not, they seem to have a care and concern about what it looks like. They also, it was a known subject. They didn't seem to be too worried about their safety. They're pretty clear about what they were. Probably felt like they could get out of it if somebody asked why they were there. If they could come as undercover police officers. They seemed to just not want to be heard, so they could get away with it. But it seemed to me they just feel like they were a lot more confident in this situation they should have been, and also not looking like what you would normally say a burglar would look like. So I think it's pretty fair to say that that's law enforcement trying to cover their tracks. If they're this corrupt as an agency, then why not? Why wouldn't they? So I thought that was interesting. So you got that going on, which I think adds a layer of craziness to the whole thing. And what would you expect? I mean, they were trying to get rid of evidence. They probably know the feds are now involved, but didn't realize the feds had beat them to the punch. So perhaps they were trying to get rid of some evidence before the feds got a hold of it. Looks to me like at this point they'd already gotten a hold of it. So the last thing is really this is a clerk, and you're gonna see, and I do believe that she's genuinely caught off guard by this. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm kind of one that would say, well, if anybody that's touching this had to see some improprieties at least, or some anomalies that just would cause you to pause. If you're that around that many cases, and if the county's got a prevalence of DWI cases, and all of a sudden you've got a bolus of them over decades that just seem weird that they never make prosecution, even that alone, where you have to, if that's all you do all day long, they've got specialized units doing this, and yet you have a category of offenders that are doing the same things as as a similar category of offenders, but this category is not getting anything and this category is getting everything. At some point somebody's got to go, what's going on here, especially if they're all going through the exact same DA. At some point over decades, somebody had to go, or at least go, yeah, that's what's going on there, and have it just become kind of a lore, and nobody decided to step in. That's why I'm not buying the police chief didn't know what was going on here. That's probably why he's been edited out of the videos, because he was a very prominent figure in the first one I saw, and now I can't seem to find him. So find that interesting, but we'll make sure we do justice and make sure he's on the thumbnail so that you don't have to add him out of my thumbnails, right? I think he's involved. Here's another clip. This is from the clerk. And I feel like she's being genuine in terms of her shock with all this stuff. So we'll take a look at that. So they had 10 more pending cases against one of the officers dismissed. So it's still going on. This is what I'm saying. I think the power behind this is well beyond the DA. Why would they, the one DA there just had said that his paralegal has homes raided with tanks. Well, if he's the first one named in a federal case, what else was he involved with? He also, if you notice, the DA paused. He said he doesn't have any guns in the home, and he didn't say his paralegal had guns, but he said, but my paralegal's been with me for blah, 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 sort of implying he has guns. So what was he involved in, and what did they both get themselves in the middle of? So I think there's more here to this and why that DA is taking a fall on this one. I really do. Jeez. What, what's, oh, take a pause, hold on. What's crazy about this to me is in my county, people get elected for convictions, and you got scrolls worth of decades worth of stuff. So for whatever reason, he felt security. He was in elected office. He was going to be staying there and just had this side hustle to make sure his income was offset. I mean, they're not getting paid an awful lot for considering what they got on their plate. I find this just astonishing. So they wouldn't show up in court is one way. Well, that I'm curious about. So I didn't catch that in the first time. The U.S. attorney. He's the U.S. attorney. He stepped down. Huh. I'll spend some time trying to figure out what that's all about. Um, Maybe I'll do a follow up video on it. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm also going to find out about the chief of police. But anyway, hadn't caught that in the first when he stepped down. But anyway, you get the idea. There's some shock behind this. I wanted to show the clerk just so you got a sense of what's going on with her. She seemed to me genuine. I think so. But in my county, man, you get arrested for a DWI, and you can count on a conviction. You're going to get convicted. Now, the level is going to determine whether it's misdemeanor or felony, and depending on what it is that their bend is. I mean, in New York State, they're focused on high risk, high needs. So if you've got an addiction reason why you're there, you might have some alternative options presented to you that are alternatives to incarceration. And I think in a lot of ways those are good things. But generally speaking, you can count on some kind of a conviction on the other side of it. Just not gonna. There's just no walking away from it. So I can tell you in our county, if there was a DWI enterprise in this county, I'd be absolutely shocked, especially with our DA. I can't even imagine that happening. But I do find it odd the amount of people that were touching this thing that are claiming to not know. So I think just for fun, I'm going to put the picture of when you see the thumbnail on this, that'll be the picture of the chief of police for Albuquerque that was originally in that video and got edited out. I don't have to edit him out. He was being super, I don't know. I just never could believe it. I can't believe it. And it was just so disingenuous. So anyway, I'm putting this out there just for a lot of reasons. I mean, I think it plays in obviously my history with the DWI, and man, nobody in Ontario County or Yates County or Livingston County came up to me and said, "Hey, we got a deal for you if you're without your DWI." In my frame of mind back then, man, I probably would have done whatever they wanted me to do because I didn't want the charge. Truthfully, in the second one, I just wanted to keep drinking. But by the time I got to the point I didn't want to drink anymore, it would have been really nice not to have that big old F flying over my head for the rest of my life. But so I can certainly say they got a customer base for it. I'm not condoning it by any means, but I can tell you this, that on the other side of it, when you try to get beyond DWI, if you actually do put your life together, you're always going to be looked at through that lens. You irresponsible, blah, 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 blah. Well, what about these guys over here? These freaking cops, these guys are walking around with badges on. They're supposedly like the example of how things should be. And yet this is how they are. In New York State right now, we have a bunch of corrections officers out on strike because they're unsafe conditions and overworked and I don't know if it's underpaid as part of it, but they're all out on strike right now. They volunteered for that work. Nobody made them do the work. I'm not saying it's a great place to work. Don't work there. Work in the post office. There's plenty of other jobs you can get. You don't have to work in that building to do that type of thing. But it doesn't excuse behavior that's poor in those roles. Regardless of what circumstances make the job less than what you think it should be, it doesn't mean that you can take it into your own hands when you're in those types of roles to do whatever the heck you want to do. If those cops are underpaid, they're doing this to supplement their income, still no excuse. You're in a line of work that you're supposed to have a higher standard. And so I honestly think it's more egregious for a law enforcement officer to take advantage of a population that is struggling for any number of reasons, addiction being one of them, and then put them in a situation for the rest of their life that they have to defend their position and why they went through that season when these cops are the ones that were, preying on it, honestly, for income. And then I look at these prison COs that are going through what they're going through now. They beat a man to death on camera. And it's the only reason why all heck's breaking loose in the prison system in New York State now is because they got caught beating a man to death. It doesn't mean that they didn't continue to beat people throughout because they didn't think the rest of them just probably got more slick about it. And then when the pressure started getting put on them, they used that time to come out and talk about how all the bad things are that are happening to them versus the fact that they actually just beat a man to death on a hospital bed in a prison. So if you haven't had a chance to check out that video, I've commented about that and what has happened here in the Marcy Correctional Facility in New York State. And I didn't get into all the implications of that, but since then, if you check out the news, it's been pretty widespread what the fallout from that behavior has happened. So those guys still have not paid for their penalties yet. There has been some sentencing and that type of thing that's happened. And actually the one that I was picking on the most, they had his baseball hat on backwards with his glasses on and was punching the guy when the guy was clearly just almost out of it. That guy was the poster child for the charges being read to him. So he's not getting anywhere anytime soon. And But anyway, if you get a chance, check out that video. I don't mean to keep rambling here, but this whole subject matter, it's hard for me because the thing is, like, I've got a lot of law enforcement friends, well, acquaintances, and one friend that's a cop, and a couple kids I went to high school with that were law enforcement, and I got family members that were law enforcement. One of my favorite uncles, he was a state trooper. I mean, these are all people that I do have respect for as individuals, and I think they handle their job well. But what I don't like is this idea that if you're not part of the thin blue line, then all of a sudden you're somehow don't understand the great stresses and they get to be excused for their behavior. And I got news for you, it doesn't work that way. I know a lot of people with a badge that are nothing more than mall cops that love the power, and they go out and do stupid stuff. In this case, I'm not suggesting that's the case with them. It might have been an economic reason why they did it. Either way, they preyed on a population that was struggling in the addiction population. And I tell you, if you're an alcoholic and you go out and get a DWI, you're shunned and you're looked at as a piece of crap. And these law enforcement officers says, payday. We know how they're going to feel on the other side of this thing, so we'll go to extort them. Hey, you're going to have to pay this money on the other side. Pay it to me now, and you'll get rid of all of you and have to deal with it. It's pretty nasty, if you ask me. It's dirty, dirty game. But anyway, guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you found this video entertaining. Between now and the next time we talk, I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of trouble, and I hope you do too.